You know, I remember in those early years of Roy Thompson Hall, Andrew Davis was conducting the TSO, and they were going to record The Planets, Gustav Holst.
Yeah.
And they actually recorded it in Kitchener, at Center in the Square. I remember very well because they came in to Kitchener and were going to commence recording on Monday. And they decided to give the orchestra an opportunity to hear the hall and play in it and get ready for the recording sessions. They would have an open, free concert for the community on Sunday.
Right, yeah.
And so my wife and I went to the concert. I was very eager to hear what it would sound like. We already knew the hall and knew that it was a terrific hall. And, and I went backstage during the intermission. And Andrew Davis was absolutely furious. He said, I can't, because, you know, the Center in the Square cost about $10 million to build.
That's right. Exactly.
And Roy Thompson Hall cost about $60 million, as I recall.
Right. That they admit to.
Well, yeah, right. Yeah. Not counting certainly the later renovations.
Plus the renovations.
And so, yeah. In any event, he said, you guys spend $10 million on this hall, which he just loved.
Yeah.
And he says, and we threw away $60 million on Roy Thompson Hall, and he was not amused, and the players were flabbergasted after the first half. They said, you know, they could hear each other on stage and so forth. It was well, which brings me to another question having to do with various venues across the country. And I think we should mention, by the way, you know, you mentioned Schultz. And Center in the Square, the acoustician, there was Russell Johnson.
Exactly.
Who
should have been the acoustician for Thompson Hall.
Exactly. And who, of course, there's so many halls around the world now that were designed by Russell Johnson. Those first years, Center in the Square was around. Up and running. There was a constant parade of delegations from around the world, people contemplating building a new hall, and they came to hear Center in the Square. Yeah. And because I did a lot of choral stuff there, Russell would often ask me to meet with these people and let them know how I felt about it from a choral standpoint. But how do the halls across the country, some of the main halls, rank in your estimation as acoustical, as performance venues? Say the Orpheum Theatre in Vancouver.
Yeah, I haven't actually done anything in the Orpheum, but I understand it's quite good. Yeah. I mean, Kitchener certainly is a landmark. It's my favorite hall. There's no discussing.
Yeah.
From I did the opening concert there even, but.
Mahler too.
But that's right. But Russell, that was a turning point for Russell Johnson, I think.
Yeah.
He had done some halls before that, like Hamilton Place is his hall.
Is it?
Yeah. And also National Arts Center in Ottawa, he did some of the work on that. This was when he was still with BB&N, Bolt, Baranek and Newman in Cambridge, which is the real sore point, because when they were planning Roy Thompson Hall, and they were looking at acousticians, the board basically was the blue pinstripe suit set. You know. Russell Johnson was working for BB&N, and he left BB&N and started his own company, RTH, right at that same point in time.
Yeah.
And he was set up in New York, and I think he had about 18 people working for him at that point, where BB&N is an enormous company. They have like 3,000 people on staff, and they're into everything, like the speech intelligibility for the space program and things like that. The board of Thompson Hall, Massey Hall, were looking at this, and they're saying, well, you know, this is a big established company. They got 3,000 people. You know, RTH it's a startup company. You know, what can they do? The thing was that BB&N had 3,000 people on staff, but less than 12 were actually dealing with pure acoustics, whereas our tech was entirely concert acoustics.
Yeah.
And in fact, Theodore Schultz, who became the acoustician for Massey Hall, when he gave me his business card the first time, I looked at BB&N, Director of Industrial Noise Control. That was his department.
Yeah.
You know, whereas Russell Johnson, who had basically built things like Hamilton Place and started to build a reputation for BB&N,
Yeah.
had left.
Yeah.
And you know, but they went with the big company, whereas Kitchener, you know, went with the guy who did the pure.
Yeah.